Well, how's it going, Venters? Guys, I was watching one of my favorite YouTubers. His channel is his name, Anton Daniels, and he was making a reaction video to a TikToker named Stay Tuned XOXO. So, XOXO used to mean hugs and kisses, but in the world we live in nowadays, it probably means I don't want your kisses, get away from me, or I'll sue. Either way. Don't be hugging strangers, right? Anyway, she said that she was working for United Healthcare and that they were offering people buyouts where they could leave and, kind of resign on their own and get a couple of checks based on how long they had been there. You know, if they've been there for 7 years, they would get 7 weeks worth of severance, yada, 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 yada. Anyway, she ended up getting 2.5 months worth of severance, but she was really, really shocked that her job was going to be gone. And the reason she was shocked is because of the fact that she felt that because she did some hard, challenging math and had to work with the public and explain things to them, she just thought that there would be no way her job would be taken over and shipped overseas, because she was saying that her job was going to go to either the Philippines or India. And she was saying that she could see other jobs that were lesser than hers being taken over by foreign entities. Anyway, she was a little bit in shock, which I think anybody would, right? Could you imagine if your boss all of a sudden called a meeting and basically gave everybody in the meeting an option to resign and get a little bit of money based on their tenure there at the company? Or if they want to stay there, they're going to risk ultimately losing their job one way or another. So you can imagine a lot of people would just voluntarily resign. Anyway, there's some advantage to doing that. If they're going to give you a couple weeks worth of pay for every year you've been there, and you're able to leave without causing a scene, that's a positive in their eyes, and it might be even a positive in an employee's eyes. So they were saying that some of the positives are that, this allows for people to kind of look for another job with a little bit of extra money in their pocket, which is obviously a plus, right? She said, I have a very tough job that requires a lot of math, and they're sending my job to India or the Philippines. And she was just in shock that someone who doesn't speak English can take over her job. You know what always gets me about everybody? They never think about these things until it hits them. Even in jobs that I've had, you have this meeting and it's like, hey, where did Bob and Dale go? And you come to find out Bob and Dale were let go, but nobody ever mentions it. There's never a farewell party for the people that are let go. And quickly you find out that a lot of your friends at work, they don't necessarily communicate with you outside of work. So when you're no longer employed there, you might as well be pushing up daisies. So why did I watch it on Anton Daniels? The reason I watch it on Anton Daniels is because he actually gives his opinions on things, which most reaction channels do. But I actually like his opinions. They're well thought out and they don't just come out of left field. He's pretty consistent with his thoughts and his strategies about life and tips that he gives to his viewers. And one thing he was saying that I frankly have to agree with is that a lot of these younger employees, and let's say younger is 29 and younger, a lot of them feel like a lot of these companies that they're not very loyal to, by the way, they feel like a lot of these companies owe them something. And see, this is where it starts to affect some of us that are listening to my voice now, because some of us are in that same camp of, hey, Arizona's a right to work state. You have a right to work, you have a right to quit. Your employer has a right to hire you, but he also has a right to fire you. It's just kind of the way Arizona is, and it's the way a lot of states are. But sometimes people get hurt when they lose their job. They don't realize that it's all about business, and sometimes business is parting company with their employees, right? And so what Anton was saying, because he's a little bit closer to our age, is he was just bringing up the fact that these young people, they're kind of weak. I don't necessarily like to call them weak because, nobody likes to have a good paying job and then just to have it dissolve overnight. And since nobody that's young is very good at saving their money for a rainy day, a lot of times they go from having sky-high bills and decent money so that they can pay their bills to all of a sudden the money's gone and they've got to scramble. And a lot of them just don't really have it in them, so they turn to TikTok and they vent. But you want to know something? If they didn't vent about that stuff, then different reaction channels like mine and Anton Daniels wouldn't be nearly as fun to watch. Sometimes it's nice to see somebody have some genuine emotion, because we seem to live in a world full of robots and automatons. And I'm not talking about AI, I'm talking about us, people. We seem kind of robotic nowadays. Nobody cares about anything that you're going through until it affects them. And I felt like this woman was the perfect example. She doesn't care that people from the Philippines or India take over your and my job. It's her job that requires math and her special know-how. And that's where you start to get caught up. You are just as disposable as anybody else. What type of plan are you going to try to have in case those worst case scenarios like layoffs or firings happen to you? As we get older, we realize that it's not so important how much you get paid. It's more so important how much you have your bills and your life under control. Because if a guy gets paid a lot and then he or she loses their money or loses their job, then all of a sudden that high pay instantly dries up, but yet their bills and all the things that they've been paying each month are still there. Meanwhile, a guy that maybe doesn't get paid as much, but he's got his bills under control, and even if he loses his job, he's got enough saved up where he or she can survive for 6 to 12 months, that person's in a much better spot. You want to try to get your life to the point where nobody can rock your world by firing you. Now, I know that's easier said than done, but that's why you can't just decide that's the way it is. You have to plan. You have to say, hey, out of every one of my paychecks, I'm going to try to save X amount of dollars just in case something like this happens. And even then, I'm a firm believer that if you lose your job, immediately start looking for another one. Don't take a month or two off to think about it. Immediately start reaching out and trying to find something new. Unless you have a boatload of money saved up, then do whatever you want to do. Guys, I've got some questions here regarding this woman that lost her job. And these questions and comments, they're not questions, they're comments. But they're from people of obviously various ages. And it's one of those where it's not just people saying, you know, we agree with you, this is horrible. These are people that have various opinions. So I thought they'd be fun to go through. You know, my thinking is if you're going to be walking, walk at a pace where at least it's healthy for you. You know, if you meander so slowly that you don't even burn any calories, then, you know, all you're doing is sitting out in the sun. I only say that because I see some walkers and it just seems like they walk slow as heck. And then when you're trying to pass them, all of a sudden they start walking like at a normal rate of speed. And it's like, let your friendly YouTube creator walk by you so they don't have to talk right next to you. I feel like sometimes people want to be right next to me while I'm trying to walk through them. It's weird. Phoenix, which is weird because I live in Phoenix. Phoenix says these people need to accept this. Number one, there's no job for life anymore. It's been like this for about 30 years. Now, why does he say that? Because the girl was kind of acting like jobs deserve to give you something. When you and I complain about that, I can kind of see where you and I are coming from, because we were raised in a world where you wanted a career with ideally the same company, and you wanted it to be forever in some cases. But young people in their 20s, they've known that that's not the way it is ever since they were little. So I don't really understand why they expect a company to just give them a bon voyage, or a farewell of extremes. Sometimes I can't get those thoughts out of my head. Number 2, you can expect to lose your job about 8 times over the course of your lifetime. Again, it's probably even worse than that. I look at people's resumes all the time, and in a 10-year period, some of them have had 8 to 15 jobs, and you and I probably know people that have had even more than that. So imagine you're trying to find the perfect employee, and you're going through a cesspool of people that are actively trying to ditch out on their current job, that have been unemployed for months or years. They have no interest in really working, or at least not working that hard. And then you have another group of people that used to never exist. It's all these people that they only want to work from home. You're supposed to be loyal to that bunch of people? That same group of people that in the interview, they don't think about how they can help your company. They think about how many weeks of PTO they get. Have you ever been in an interview like that and you're like, hey, I want to impress this boss. And then the person next to you in the orientation class is more concerned with how much vacation time they get. If I was an employer and I'm doing an interview, I'm going to want to hire the one, even if they're lying to me, I'm going to want to hire the one that's concerned about what they're going to do performance-wise for my company over the one that's more worried about how many weeks of vacation time they get. Some of these questions that you hear people ask their boss are just ridiculous. Is PTO important? Sure. If the company doesn't offer it, maybe find a company that does. But if you're trying to get a job that pays you, try to get the job, and then you can always decline the job after you find out if they give PTO time. And by the way, most jobs give PTO time anyway. It's not worth finding out about there. And then there's a third part, number 3. There's a recession approximately every 7 years. Welcome to reality. So what this guy is saying is that there's cycles that we go through. There's going to be moments in your life where jobs are hiring, and they're going to pay you more money for doing exactly what you're currently doing now. You're going to jump over to some of those companies throughout the course of your life. Some of them are going to be the grass looks greener scenario, and some of them are going to be excellent moves on your part. But you're more than likely only going to be loyal to your company until you find one that offers more. And during that same lifetime, companies are only going to be loyal to you if you find a way to legitimately outperform your coworkers. Your coworkers are actually not your friends. Now, wait a minute, Jesse. You said that we should try to find friendship at work. You should, because if you're going to stay there long term, you want to know that you can enjoy your coworkers and develop friendships. At the same time, if only one person gets the promotion and it's you and your 3 or 4 friends in the office, well, guess what? You're competitors with your coworkers. It's just the way it is. But just like football players, you can be friends with the backup quarterback if you're the quarterback, but you got to know somewhere along the line, your buddy, the backup quarterback, is going to try to replace you. That's where you got to be Tom Brady and say, yeah, no problem. You can be my backup and someday you can replace me. But oh, by the way, I'm going to play for 22 more years. Could you imagine how many people thought I'm going to take over for Tom Brady one of these days? And he ended up outlasting everybody, including the backups. I'm a big Tom Brady fan. So I've told you how Anton Daniels feels about this. Young people need to toughen up. There's a part of me that agrees with that, but there's also a part of me that says, you know what? The young people didn't grow up in the day and age that we did. And we're not as tough and rugged as our fathers and grandfathers were, because they had to really live in a world where you had to show your value and worth. We might have gotten lucky, but a lot of us were in jobs too where we had to show our value and worth. I think a lot of times these kids don't realize that all the advice they get from other young people about jobs usually involves quitting, resigning, quiet quitting, not trying any harder than you have to. No wonder companies want to lay off people in droves, in addition to the, you know, profit and loss ledger sheets and stuff, because obviously it's beneficial for them to get rid of a lot of payroll every time, you know, it's time to discuss earnings with shareholders and stuff, right? Expiativa says people want to cancel companies that removed DEI, but they don't want to cancel companies that hire employees overseas. That's interesting. I never really thought about that. But I'll tell you what, I've griped about that. So the DEI thing, the only time it freaks me out is when I'm thinking about my doctor, my surgeon, my airplane pilot. You know, those are roles where I just want the best person in there. You know, I just really do at all times. No ifs, ands, or buts. But if it means, you know, certain roles that aren't necessarily so life and death, I like for people to get a chance at it regardless of who they are or what their background or their race is. I like for everybody to get a fair shake. Does that always happen? Probably not. But I like that to happen. Now, let's take the second part of your comment. If we go ahead and we get mad at companies for DEI, which, by the way, I don't think people were upset at companies. I think people were upset that the federal government is trying to penalize companies that don't go the DEI route. So I don't know if it's a really good comparison. But your second part is, why don't we penalize companies that send their workforce overseas? I don't know if we need to penalize them, but I wish we could do something about it, because it's kind of irritating to know that whatever you can do, there's a guy in India that'll do it for 1/3 the cost. There's something really horrible about that. I also don't like how every time I pick up my phone, it's somebody from overseas trying to scam me. Now, it's easy for me to figure them out because every time they call me, they think I'm some retired guy and they're trying to get me to give them my Medicare Advantage plan over the phone, I'm assuming, so that they can steal my identity. So it's easy for me to catch them now, but I just can't stand how everyone that calls us is a guy from India. And that's where artificial intelligence kind of scares me, because eventually that they're going to be able to make their voice sound just like a guy from down the street, and you won't even know they're from India. In the future, and it might be the very near future, they're going to be able to figure out what companies that you have your cable bills from, where your utilities are from, where your bank is with, and they're going to be able to reach out to you, and they're going to use artificial intelligence, and they're going to actually sound like Jesse and Bob. You're just going to think they're American, even though they're communicating with their Indian dialect. It's crazy, but you know it's going to happen. I feel like I always sound like I have boogers in my throat. Carl CWMS says, I had a lady ask me to pay her mortgage after being laid off. A week earlier, she pointed out how she wouldn't assist me with cleaning my house because, quote unquote, those are wife duties. I reminded her of that conversation and got off the phone to keep cleaning. I love that. So if you meet a girl, right, a significant other, let's say, and all of a sudden she comes over to your house and you're trying to ask her if she'll help you clean, and she just flat out says, I'm not going to do that. Those are wifey duties. I'm not your wife, yada, yada. She has a right to say that. One could even say it's kind of rude to ask your girlfriend to clean your house, depending on how long she's been your girlfriend. This woman said she doesn't want any wifey duties, so evidently she doesn't like you that much. But then she ends up getting laid off, and she has absolutely no problem asking you to literally pay her mortgage so she doesn't lose her home. And all of a sudden you get that satisfaction of being able to tell her, hey, when the going gets rough and I need some help cleaning my house, you don't want anything to do with that. Now you need help saving your house and you want me to be there for you? That's why people should always try to treat others with dignity, respect, and, dare I say, kindness. Do you have to clean someone's house? No. But if you like them enough that you are their boyfriend or girlfriend, you shouldn't just flat out tell them no. Try to weasel your way out of it in a respectful way. Don't be flat out mean and just say, no, I'm not your butler, I'm not your slave, I'm not your this, that, and the other. Whatever you want to say, there's going to be repercussions for that. So I love that story. I'll tell you what, I bet you if she had a time machine, I bet she would go back in time, she'd help you clean your house, and then the whole time she was cleaning, she would say, you know, I'm helping you clean your house, Harold, because I just know in the future, if I ever needed you, you would be there for me. Right, Harold? Right, Harold? Answer me, Harold! Wouldn't that be cool if we had the ability, not all of us, but some of us, if you had the ability to just snap your fingers and go back in time and just like redo little small decisions like that? Because that's what that lady would have done. She would have gone back to that day and she would have cleaned that house and she would have said, one of these days I might need you to help me pay my mortgage. Oh my goodness. At Wes Washburn says 10.5 weeks, because that's how long the girl got of severance pay. He goes, 10.5 weeks, question mark. Man, that's 2.5 months of not doing anything. And it's enough time to grind and find another job if you're actually as useful as you say. So I don't know about you, but seriously, if some job gave you the equivalent of 2.5 months worth of time before you had to find another job, that is a blessing. Here's the problem. Most people would take their dear sweet time and wait till the very end of the 2.5 months to start really pushing and trying to find a job. The key is to use those monies to get ahead of the game. Go find a job immediately. Now you have a brand new job that's going to pay you on top of this money that your previous employer is going to pay you. That looks to me like a chance to really get ahead in life. Easier said than done, of course. We always had an inkling that our government was kind of BSing us about a lot of stuff. Trump and the Doge department, headed by Elon Musk, found out that there are 3,472,000 people between the age of 120 and 129 that are still drawing a monthly Social Security check. You and I know there's not 3 million people on the planet that age, because the oldest person in the world's only like 120, right? There are 3,936,000 people age 130 to 139 that are still drawing a Social Security check. Obviously, none of them are still on the planet. Why are we paying out their check each month? There's 3,542,000 age 140 to 149. If somebody writes out a check and it just goes in some mailbox and sits there and nothing ever happens with it, who knows, maybe that's just numbers and it doesn't hurt anything. But what if somebody's kids or grandkids or family members are still finding a way to cash these checks? That's obviously fraud. It needs to be stopped. It gets worse. There's 3,542,140 plus year olds, and then there's 1,345,150 plus year olds. The moral of the story is there's a lot of people that are still drawing Social Security that aren't even alive anymore. That sounds like a lot of wasted funds, potentially. Again, unless there's just a check sitting there that never gets cashed and it doesn't hurt anything. I don't really know. I'm sure we'll find out more. With that being said, there's one check that you don't want to cash, and that's your lifetime check. We want to extend that puppy before we cash it out. The best way we can do that is with a daily walk together. So I'm walking with you every day. I hope you make today the day that you join us venters. And with that being said, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.